What is your zombie apocalypse plan?
It's a good question because...
Is it ethical to essentially kidnap a kid to save their life?
It means death. Full stop.
Welcome to the Thunderdome.
Today, Mark and I are talking about the thrilling post-apocalyptic science fiction television show on Hulu, Paradise, Season 2, Episode 5, The Mailman. So spoilers are ahead.
We ask each other what our survival plans would be in the apocalypse.
We talk about the ethics of saving or maybe stealing a child.
And then we dive into our overall thoughts of the episode.
Quick thank you to our channel members for the continued support. We truly appreciate it.
Now, let's get into the episode. Okay, I feel a very important question was asked in this episode.
Yes.
So, Sterling, I now ask you, what is your zombie apocalypse plan?
It's a good question because, it was asked in the episode, and I feel like I've watched enough post-apocalyptic content that I should have thought about something. I've watched a decent number of zombie stuff. I'm not a huge zombie person, but I've watched a decent number. Definitely watched a few, George Romero films. Mm-hmm. Definitely seen 2 of the 28 movies.
Yeah.
Last of Us. So definitely seen zombie or zombie adjacent stuff. Seen other types of post-apocalyptic things, with Silo, this. But I haven't put a ton of thought into it, and I think I might be a little bit like Gary, where it's like I didn't put a ton into it, and I don't necessarily think that I have many skills of my own to be able to survive. Gary says it a few times. He's like, I'm just a mailman. Because it's interesting. The two of them are putting together this list of people that are like perfect for this, and really, like, what does Gary bring to the equation?
Money.
He kind of is just
that.
Yes, his pension. That, yes, yeah, and he it was his post office. But other than that, like once he's there, like what does he continue to bring to it? That's kind of how I feel like I would be. I'd be one of the people that, like, I don't have survival skills. I did recently-ish in the last 2-3 years learn how to use a bow and arrow, but not like in the real world.
Sure.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'd be great at like hunting an animal. I feel bad about that. So I feel like I'd need to leave California because of both proximity to water and earthquakes.
Sure.
So I think I'd need to get in. Hopefully I'd have time for that. I'd probably go to, I feel like Colorado with its, I've got like family there, space, height.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't have it does have fires, but I don't think it has a ton of other natural disasters. So it's not one of the floody spots. So I feel like that would basically be it. I'd meet up with family in Colorado and see if we can come up with a more serious plan. And we'd probably have to, it would basically be Andy, my brother-in-law. Mm-hmm. He's got the outdoor survival skills. It would basically be like, look, Andy, you can have my brain, you can have my body for whatever kind of tasks. Like you lead us into the mountains, because I do think you do possibly want to get away from scary civilization a little bit, have some privacy and protection. So I think it would basically be like, Andy, I'm going to trust you. You help us survive.
It's a reasonable survival plan. So I have been thinking about this a very long time. I was a big...
So you're the Enos type. You put some thought into this.
Maybe a little bit. I used to, on first dates, ask every date there's zombie survival plan. And just not like I judged them too hard, but it's a good exercise to be like, okay, if things do hit the fan, what would be your strategy? What would be your goal? Like, what would you try to do? And I was...
Does the answer matter to you sticking with them or not?
No. It's just more
Okay.
like what kind of thought process and like how you would think. Like I dated this one girl who was all about, oh, I would just lay down and die. And I'm like, well, okay, I know that you're reliable. You will have my back no matter what. Nah, just Josh in there. But I read the Zombie Survival Guide, World War Z.
Mm.
Uh, I really like The Walking Dead early on, Dawn of the Dead.
Early on, yeah, I get
Yeah,
that.
not later on.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I'd always be thinking, and back when I lived in California with you, I was very much of, okay, you got to go somewhere like Costco because cement walls, lots of food, probably a ton of things that could have a longer shelf life there than just like a grocery store. But then after seeing COVID happen and the amount of people that go to Costco in general.
Oh yeah, yeah.
If there was,
That's everybody's first reaction is
everybody's
Costco.
going to Costco.
Yeah.
So I am now more, since living out in Colorado, I feel like I would just go hide in the mountains. And
Yeah.
I feel fairly confident that I could survive out there with my knowledge of animals. I'm not opposed to hunting. I've never gone hunting, but it is something I have been curious about for like my meat source. And so I don't have any qualms processing an animal like that. And ultimately, like, if it's not winter, I feel like I could survive out there in a tent and sleeping bag for at least several days without really being worried of death or dehydration or starvation. So
That's the tough part is winter. Like I almost wonder whether or not moving further south would be better so that you don't have that added stress.
yeah, winter would be hard. I think that if this occurred in winter, apocalypse happens, I would say one, going to REI is a great idea. Getting a, because I do think a lot of people aren't going to think about REI when panic sets in. And I think Link makes a great point. There's camping gear there. They have sleeping bags that are rated to be low temperature sleeping bags that you could survive in a tent with these sleeping bags. They have the clothing for it, and they have dehydrated meals that a lot of people don't think about. And they have propane there. They have everything that you could need to survive. So I think hitting up something like REI, Jax, Sierra, or a combination of those before it happens, spending some time in the mountains to let it all cool down. And then once things have kind of mellowed out, potentially checking some of the mountain homes to like have a more fortified living condition and not just being in a tent.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do think that winter really makes it so much tougher. There's obviously I'm a huge board game nerd, and speaking of post-apocalypse and zombies, and winter. It's a great board game called Dead of Winter.
Oh yeah,
that deals with zombies in winter, and that's part of the problem is it's not just that you're dealing with zombies, it's that you're dealing with zombies in winter. And so you have one fortified location that you start at, but you have to go out to get various supplies, from other locations, whether it's the
school, the hospital,
the school, the store, the hospital, the police station, for different kind of supplies. And that's part of the danger is winter as much as it is the zombies.
Interesting.
So,
okay, now I have another question that this episode brought up, and it's a similar question that was brought up in Station 11.
Okay.
Is it ethical to essentially kidnap a kid to save their life? This is the second time we've seen a post-apocalyptic show dealing with somebody that is not the parent of a child that knows that for the betterment of the child, it is important to go with them and save them. Is that ethical? That's a tough one.
It is a tough one. I think that at the moment when he did that, I think that they believed their information was vindicated, that they were correct about this post-apocalypse, about where it was coming from and what was happening from it. But there was no way that they could know that, because apparently in this world, scientists hadn't agreed that this was going to happen. So this was kind of based off of the dark corners of the web, and one scientist that's kind of like blowing the whistle. But there is some kind of questions around, like, if that's the information that you have, that's maybe fine to base decisions about yourself, but is that okay to use that information to choose what happens to a child, even in that child situation? Also, he's potentially endangering everybody that's going there, because it's not like he actually knows the kid. Maybe this kid is extremely disruptive and
he could have tons of behavioral issues. He could be a biter, tantrum thrower, destroy stuff, burn their resources when people aren't watching. There is a bit of a liability to him.
Yeah, I think Dawn is an optimist and a warm, caring person, and I think that she wouldn't turn away from a person like that. Kind of like assuming the best in them and assuming that she could make things work out. And I think that I consider myself more of a realist.
Sure.
But I think it can look like pessimism, and maybe there is a tinge of pessimism in there. Maybe there's more than a tinge of pessimism. So I think that I would calculate that life potentially makes it harder for the rest of us to survive. And so I think I'd be more like Enos, where I would, make the calculations and say, we calculated for 7, and everybody has a role, with the exception of, once again, I don't actually think that Gary kind of had a role post-apocalypse. And so I'd say that kid shouldn't come. And I don't know if it is ethical. That's a really interesting question.
Yeah, I'm very, very torn on it. I think,
if you really believe what you, that could just make you crazy, not necessarily ethically right. I feel like if you truly believe what they believed, that if you don't go into a shelter like where they're going, it means death, full stop.
Sure.
Then I think it kind of is the right thing. But in my head, I would say that I very strongly believe this, but I don't know it for a fact. So I don't know if that's right to impose that belief on a child. Am I really saving them, or am I just stealing the child?
Okay. Do you think it's more ethical the way it happened in Paradise, or more ethical the way it happened in Station 11? Because technically in Station 11, Kristen, I think her name was.
I don't remember you might be right, yeah.
Her family was not bad, right? She had a loving family that she wanted to reach out to. She kept trying to call to get home to her family. Where Bean's family, clearly on some type of drug, getting evicted, possibly abusive, maybe a little bit more ethical because that living condition is terrible. So it's like taking a gamble. If the world does go to shit or not, we can at least give this kid kind of a better life, or not. Yeah. Where
in Station 11, I think for me, Station 11 was a little bit more ethical because, so this is a mild spoiler for Station 11, because if you haven't watched Station 11, this happens in the first episode, and then everything else kind of unfolds from there. So it's not a huge spoiler for the show as a whole. But in that one, the apocalypse happens, and as he is bringing this child to the child's house, the apocalypse happens, and he realizes that that kid's parents probably aren't alive. He lies to her because she can't handle that knowledge right now.
Mm-hmm.
But she can't go, like, he needs to leave because it's going to be very bad if he doesn't. She also needs to leave for the same reason. He can't just leave her alone in that situation. True. And so in that situation, I feel like it's a little bit more ethical in Station 11.
You know, it is an interesting question, because I feel like it's both are correct. I do think there are ethical reasons to do it, especially if the world is ending and you cannot save this child and the only option is to essentially kidnap them.
Yeah.
And with the whole situation for Bean, I also get it, but also they could have been wrong. Like, there wasn't a guarantee that the world was ending. It was hearsay, speculation, and probably a lot of people did get wiped out from that because a lot of people weren't as prepped for what happened.
Yeah.
I don't know what the right answer is. Let us know in the comments. Is it ethical to kidnap a child if the apocalypse is happening to save the child?
You could make the argument that the one we see here is a little bit more ethical because that kid needed to be taken away from their parents. It needed to be by what's the Child Protective Services?
Yeah, CPS.
Yeah, not just by, a vigilante.
Just a mailman.
Yeah, by a mailman. But I would hope that if they realize that the world didn't end, that day 2 or 3, maybe week 1, that they would then call Child Protective Services and say, hey, here's the situation. Here's what we did. Here's why. So I do hope they would kind of make it right at that point.
Sure.
And so I can kind of see that was kind of a spot, a decision on the spot. I do also think it was a pretty bad decision because at that point, what Enos saw on his phone was like 20 minutes to impact, and getting the kid took a decent chunk out of that. Dealing with Xavier's wife, Teri, and the kid took another decent chunk out of that. He didn't know that there were EMPs and that the EMPs were going to take out those weapons based off of the last information that he had. I don't like interrupting a show, so I wouldn't actually yell at a screen because I don't want to affect, other people's viewing experiences. And my wife was there, but inside I was yelling at the screen. Hell, if I was Enos, I would have, if he knew where the base was, I would have just maybe taken off. Like, look, if you're not going to listen, I got this thing saying 20 minutes. We cannot stop for any reason. Full stop.
Yeah, and he did know because he shared the location with the others, which was a little weird that these Enos and Gary lived kind of near each other and they never met up, but yet they were like best friends for years on the gaming thing. I feel like they would have met up at least once, but it did give a little awkward meet when they had it, which was all right.
Yeah.
Okay, so overall, what did you think of this episode?
A little on the fence because I think that there were, I think it was another interesting vignette, where it has this almost self-contained story up until we kind of catch back up with things. So it was an interesting story, but at the same time, it was more flashback than not flashback. And I don't think that flashback really did anything to shed an interesting light on what was happening. If anything, the flashback was more to confuse you as an audience member, because I think up until towards the very end of the episode, the more of the flashback you see, the more that you see that he is kind and compassionate and doesn't have a big view of himself and isn't into weapons. And so I think that the majority of the flashback kind of makes you lulls you into a false sense of security that this is the good guy, and if anybody's the bad guy of these guys, it's Enos.
Sure.
And so it's more of there just to kind of like trick you and surprise you with that whole, in the end, it was actually Gary that kind of did the bad thing. And the episode didn't really move the plot forward much in and of itself, which I think would have been fine if it was like the current story that we're watching.
Yeah.
Where it's like, it's the next thing that happened. And like, we need to get through this to get to the next plot point. But it was flashback, so it wasn't necessary to the main story, and it didn't really advance the main story. So it just kind of felt like it was slowing things down a little bit.
Interesting take. I actually think I really enjoyed this episode.
Okay.
And I did like the aspect that it was its own little vignette, and I did like I liked that it gave us a taste of what Teri's life was in the last 3 years. Like, we saw a lot of what Xavier's life was in the last 3 years due to being in the bunker, and like the flashbacks that we had seen throughout a whole season that filled out the context of that. And I liked seeing in just one episode what Teri went through. And ultimately, I think it really did a good job of setting up this character, Gary, as somebody that was struggling with loneliness and acceptance of his life. And you see him grow a little bit in the very early stages before they're even in the bunker. He's like afraid of the dog. He's barely talking to the person he delivers the mail. And then you see his progression as he's becoming more confident. And I really liked that aspect. And then on my second watch, seeing how he was acting with Xavier, there was all these things, and the way that he was explaining how Enos was, and then the flashbacks not showing that. Like, they kept pointing him out to be this angry, militant guy that is, it has to be this way, but we never see Enos do that. The only time we ever see Enos really cause a ruckus is at Christmas. He's like, okay, 10 more minutes. We have to conserve energy. He's not mean about it. People give him gifts. Everybody in the flashback seemed to care about Enos and is kind to Enos. And the only moment that you really think Enos is the bad guy is when he destroys the radio. And that could be the resentment of bringing an extra person. They had this plan. But the way they paint him out of him, this is the most important he's ever felt. He doesn't want anybody to leave. And yet later on we see he doesn't care when the nurse and the mechanic leaves. He is talking about Teri leaving and is more worried about how his friend's going to deal with it than he cares. So I thought that the twist was earned, that he did it. And even when he talks about the very first moment he meets Xavier, he says to Xavier's like, where are they? He says, I don't know. But then later he says, I know where they are. I try to rescue them. And so there was all these other underlying clues that Gary is not being forthcoming with what's really going on. And so I thought that, because the very first time I watched it, I built empathy towards Gary. I was like, this guy is a kind, caring guy. And part of me still believes there's a little bit of that in Gary. But then seeing him cold-blooded shoot Enos, his best friend, just so he could hold on to Teri, you see this man that has built up this empathy towards him, and he is willing to go to any length to keep Teri after he even mentions he had no life before this, and this was his life. And I think that what he was describing with Enos, where he didn't want people to leave, was really him feeling that way. Yeah. And I thought it was well earned. I thought it was interesting. I think it sets up some pretty high stakes for the next episode. because he still isn't as forthcoming with what's going
Right.
on. He's just said that I have a crush on your wife.
It does and it doesn't amp up the stakes, because I think that the stakes when he first tells the story at the end of the last episode, she's been taken, it seems like you assume that it's by bad people.
Sure.
And so it's more than one person, and that will be a very dangerous situation. We still have bad stakes that it is, she's still taken, but now the person that is the dangerous person is the person that is right next to Xavier. And so maybe he doesn't suspect it. And so instead of being a bunch of people that Xavier is going to have to outsmart, it's that the danger is right next to him and he doesn't know it. So it's kind of the same stakes, but kind of different.
Mm-hmm.
I did like the story, and I definitely like the actor. He was in, there was a great series on, I think, Netflix called Mindhunter, I think by David Fincher.
Oh, yeah.
That follows the early days of the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the early days of the CIA, but the early days of the program around serial killers.
Yep.
Where it was really about kind of trying to understand them in order to be able to
catch other ones.
Catch other ones.
Yeah. Which
was a very revolutionary idea at its time, because it can kind of seem like you're working with the enemy and sympathizing with them. Like, why would you try and understand these monsters? And he was one of the serial killers, and he's quite imposing as that serial killer. I don't know if they used forced perspective, had elevated shoes, because I feel like there was a bigger height difference in that show.
He's like a big guy. Yeah.
He's a really imposing figure, but he's also at the same time, he's kind of a gentle giant. He's like, while he is physically imposing, the way that he talks makes him seem like the kind that wouldn't hurt a fly, which then with the knowledge of what he's done just really makes it really messes with your mind. Love that actor. So I did think that it was portrayed well. I did like the vignette for the most part. Like I said, it kind of goes back to something I said a while ago, which is that sometimes if there's too many flashbacks, it kind of feels like maybe you need to start your story earlier. Mm-hmm. And this is, we keep getting some of these, and some of them, like this one, I feel like really didn't give us context that around the scene. It was more of like it made him seem one way, the way we kind of thought, up until the last 15 minutes, maybe even like less than that, 10 minutes.
I was going to say last like 7 minutes, basically.
That's the only time that it starts to finally flip the script and actually give you context that really changes your view of what you are watching. Like previous to that, it wasn't making you better understand the situation. It wasn't helping you to like, obviously it did humanize this character, but that wasn't necessary because we didn't think he was bad. So for me, like it just kind of slowed down the story a little bit. I did like it, but I wish that maybe we had gotten it earlier, kind of around when it happened, versus now, as we're like, they've been teasing some really interesting things in this show.
Yeah.
A lot of people have questions about what's going on. I think the nosebleeds, the visions that, is this the past, the future? How are these people connected? There's all of these questions, and this episode just feels like it's sitting on that by going kind of into the past.
I do see that point of it. I do think, they probably could have gotten away with not doing anything in the bunker this season. I think that the bunker has been, I think we had 1 or 2 episodes there. It's just been the one episode.
Just been the one episode.
And I think they could have maybe not had that episode and just focused on what was going on outside. And then right before they go back into the bunker, they could tease out what's going on in the bunker. I do agree. They probably didn't need as like if that was episode 2, episode 1's the one with Link and Annie. Episode 2, we see this backstory and maybe not get the reveal that he's the bad guy in that episode. Just we see everything up to them meeting the train and then cut there. Then we get to Xavier, see what happens. I think that could be a better way to tell that story ultimately. But also we found out that Link's group is a lot bigger than I thought.
They hinted at that because when we saw Link's group get to the bunker, they said something about, oh, so-and-so's group isn't here. Should we wait for them? And somebody in the party, probably Geiger, said, let's go ahead. It was either Geiger or Link. It was like, let's go on ahead without them. So they had made it clear that there were other ones coming.
That's true. I forgot about that. But I guess I wasn't expecting it to be as big as when he mentioned that he's got a group trying to get to Colorado in the bunker. And
this does answer a question I think you had earlier. I don't think it was Dawn. You'd ask, like, how do you think these people know?
Yes, how they knew about the bunker. And the manifesto of the guy that shot Cal is he laid it all out there. So that makes sense. I know that we currently have a theory at DIA that there's a secret. There's been a lot of construction there. And a lot of people have these theories about the Illuminati building a secret bunker in the airport. So they could be building an airport bunker, and I'm not really doing anything about it. But if the world went to crap, I would definitely go check it out and be like, is there a bunker there? Well, I got to find out.
Right. Yeah, so it did give us a little bit more of that information. It's not like nothing happened. It's not like, I feel like this like tiptoes the plot forward just a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, I did like some similarities between Teri and this group that is part of Link's group, where Teri was very much of like, we can't just survive if you're not living life. What's the point of surviving if life is not enjoyable? Or what is there to live for, right?
Yes.
And so Teri had that mentality. That's why she set up the whole thing with Christmas. And then I don't know the woman on the train's name, but she had the coffee and the nice tea set. She said, you have to do things that make you feel like you. Yeah. I like that message. I like the message of what they're trying to do. Teachers Without Borders, trying to restart the world. And I like that message from a post-apocalyptic viewpoint.
Yeah, it definitely is much more positive than what we've gotten in other shows and TV, because they made it seem like this group in the train may be the bad ones. And then we find out that there's really kind of only the one bad apple. And it's not that he's an evil person. He just, faced with the end of the world and sadness and loneliness, he made one terrible decision. And that's not me trying to condone it and say that that's okay, but it does humanize it and make it much more understandable and much less evil, like it was planned and premeditated and something terrible along those lines. This show has been, I think, much more positive in its portrayal of the apocalypse, of what comes after, that it does seem like people are banding together, that there is a sense of community. It was very interesting seeing the community that ended up next to the group, that came out of it. And I did think that type of community is less likely in a world like that. I feel like when there are a few people, that there's a little bit more fear of people that are different from you. But it could definitely happen. And I love the fact that you can have resets, for better or worse. When something like this happens, it is possible for groups to create their own ways of doing things and their own culture. And it was nice that this group that came out of the apocalypse was one that seemed like obviously not welcoming to outsiders, but welcoming to different walks of life within the group, you know?
Sure.
Your color, gender, sexual orientation, the way that you dress didn't matter to the group.
Yeah.
As long as you were one of them and they could kind of trust you, that was the important thing.
I did love that. I love the idea that we go back to like a barter system where it's like, I have these resources. What do you have that I could trade? And it's constant, ever flowing of resources and items for survival. I like that aspect of it. And I like that hope that that's where we would achieve, like what we would achieve as society picking up the pieces again. But I loved the reference at the auction, and I don't know if you noticed it. No?
I don't think so.
So the auctioneer, they say it as we're going in, welcome to the Thunderdome.
Oh, yeah. From Mad Max?
Mad Max. And they were dressed like Tina Turner from Mad Max, the Thunderdome.
Yes.
And that is just, it's such a great way to show that there is humor in that world. You know, even though the world has gone to shit, it's awful, we can still make light. We are in a post-apocalyptic situation and we have the Thunderdome. I thought that was great. I love that little moment. And yeah,
I like that too. This is more for you because I didn't just want to shit on the episode because I didn't think it was a bad episode.
Okay.
I just, like I said, I felt like it kind of put on the brakes because it didn't really advance the plot much.
Sure.
But I think one of the things that was like slightly unsatisfying about Gary's turn, and I know it wasn't premeditated, so he doesn't actually have a plan, but he does have to be thinking in his head about what his next step is, even though he didn't expect, Xavier to come. But like, what the fuck is his plan?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's not very smart.
Wouldn't it be better to say like she left so that he can get out? Like he doesn't need Xavier snooping around there.
No, and I feel like Bean saw him kill Enos.
Yeah,
and so being told
Teri. Yes,
and we aren't talking about the other people that were part of the group. The carpenter, the gardener, the survivalist. They're not mentioning why they left. And here's another thing that I think Xavier thought about and was like, I don't know if I trust this story. So they came with guns and they took everybody but you. Why didn't they take you? If they're kidnapping these people for whatever reason, why would they take a kid, Teri, Enos, all these people, and leave you behind?
I just assumed he was like hiding. But yeah, he doesn't explain that.
But he talks about that he went to try to save her, and so it's like they know you exist, they're just letting you do whatever. So again, there is a lot of holes in his story, and ultimately I think that's why it's very obvious from the beginning Xavier just doesn't trust him. Right.
So do you think he does trust him now? Because Xavier was saying like, I don't trust you. There's something you're hiding from me. And Gary gives him a partial truth, which might have been enough to like, to get him to trust him, which is saying, look, I'll be honest with you. I do love your wife, but because of that, the best thing, to make her happy is to get the two of you together. And so it's like, that's a partial truth, which might be enough to, get rid of that whiff of. And so I did wonder if like the handshake was Xavier saying, okay, I knew that there was something, or if Xavier was just kind of doing that to like placate him of like, that's still not it. But if you're still hiding it from me and pretending that you gave it all, then I'm going to pretend that I trust you so you don't know that I still don't trust you.
So do you think that Gary is truthful to Xavier about wanting to get his wife back for Xavier.
No.
So,
and that's why, like, I don't know what his plan is. Like, what is he? Well, what is he planning on doing with this guy that is, that used to be a member of the Secret Service? And I mean, to a certain extent, wouldn't it be better to just like off him ASAP versus the longer he is around, he's a liability, or get rid of him? Like, that's what I was saying is, like, when he came, why didn't Gary just say, like, look, they left looking for you because the weather's finally good, and head back to Colorado. You should find him.
I think Gary ultimately wants Teri.
Yeah,
and
Gary wants Teri.
Potentially, if Xavier goes after this, if maybe Gary is thinking that if Xavier tries to attack this train to rescue his wife, he could die in the process. And then he could swoop in to Teri and be like, look at the pre-existing obligation that you had is gone. I tried to help him get there. I tried to help him get to you. Maybe I'm a good option. Like, that's probably where he's thinking. But I do think, because Gary tells Xavier in the beginning, she was like a sister to me. And then he's like, oh, actually, I do have feelings. Like, instantly in that moment, I think Xavier knows I can't trust this guy fully. Like, no, everything that he has told me could be a lie. And now everything he'll say to me, I'll take with a grain of salt. I'll never be in a position for him to take advantage of me. So I don't think Xavier is fully trusting of him.
Okay.
But I do think that if he thinks that he is bad, letting him believe that he trusts him is better than creating more of that, like, okay, well, I know you didn't tell me everything. And maybe we'll get a little bit more pieces. Like, there is the big mural that has Enos on it. And it's like, if Enos was such a bad guy that everybody hated, why was he like so beloved on this mural, treated like everybody else?
Yeah.
Did Enos really rat you guys out? I don't believe that would really happen. So I think Xavier does not believe his stories.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.